Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the 31 Days of Horror. I am your host, Moon616, and thank you once again for stopping in, guys. Yes, 31 Days of Horror Volume 7, Day 17, coming at you live. All right, so we're going to take it back to one of my favorite eras of film, the 1950s sci-fi horror atomic age type films. The film from 1953, written and directed by Kurt Sodermack, who he directed a few films, but he's mostly known as a screenwriter. He actually wrote the original Wolfman. He wrote The Invisible Man Returns. He wrote the original Black Friday film with Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi, and so on and so on. He worked with Universal quite a bit. He did a lot of famous films, and just has a plethora of crazy screenwriting credits and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. And this one's also starring Richard Carlson, who I recognize right away from The Maze that came out in, I believe, 1953. He was also from The Creature from the Black Lagoon, which I recognize him from that, and It Came from Outer Space. So some notable people that make up this film. So that was always nice to know. So the film in question here is called The Magnetic Monster. Yes, I'm a big fan of like 1950s atomic age type films. I've had this one in the collection for a few years, and I've never popped it in. So I thought, why not? I need something from the 50s. Might as well do this one. I did learn something by reading on the back here. It says this is the first one in actually a trilogy of films. So there's this film, then there's Riders to the Star in 1954, and then the film Gog from 1954, which is kind of cool. So, but we'll get into that in a minute. So, get into the premise of The Magnetic Monster from 1953. Basically, this one is about a scientist that has created this new radioactive element. And the thing is with this radioactive element is that it basically creates mass out of energy that it absorbs from like metallic objects, so metal objects. And once it absorbs this this energy, they become super magnetic and stuff like that. The problem is with this radioactive element, this new radioactive element this guy has created, is that it's kind of out of control. What's happening is it's absorbing so much energy and creating so much mass that it's doubling its size every 12 hours. And the problem is with this is that it's getting so big so quick that it's could potentially actually, you know, put the Earth out of orbit due to its magnetic pole and stuff like that. So basically what happens is Richard Carlson plays the head of this OSI, this government agency called the Office of Scientific Investigation. So they're an organization that is basically, they investigate scientific issues and things like that. So they get called in to investigate this, which leads them to this warehouse, or this hardware store, where everything there is like completely magnetized and stuff. And so they start doing testing. They're like, what the hell is going on? Like the magnet pole is like off the charts and stuff like that. So they start investigating, which leads them to find out about this this scientist that has created this new radioactive element. And so now their job is to figure out how to beat this thing. But the problem is it's like an invisible monster. It's a magnetic invisible monster. So they have to use, you know, their wits and their scientific ends to create a way to stop this thing from doubling its growth before the Earth gets, you know, basically out of orbit and stuff. So that is the premise of the movie. Now my thoughts on this one. This is a fantastic movie, man. It's really, really well written. I think it's a totally different type of atomic age 50s sci-fi horror film, because this one right here doesn't have a lot of visual effects and stuff, because the monster here, the magnetic monster, is actually pretty much invisible. It's this radiation element that is absorbing energy and creating mass out of that, you know, and it's just like a totally different type of film. What separates this movie from a lot of the 50s sci-fi films is the science used in this film feels very authentic. You know, when you're watching a lot of 50s sci-fi films, you know, the science that they're using and things that are going on just seems so far-fetched. It seems so out in left field. You're like, you know, there's no way that they even had the technology to pull that shit off scientifically. Here, they seem like they actually have the ability and the knowledge and the scientific ends to figure out what's going on here, and also the technology to figure out how to defeat this thing. And it's very interesting. It's got a very scary idea to it, because given that kind of realism within the scientific technology, it kind of gives this weird realism that, you know, it's possible that this, you know, could actually happen kind of thing. You know, you got to extend your mind a little bit, but I'm just saying the scientifical ends of this, man, pretty interesting how they did this. They really get you like zoned in on believing that, you know, that they have the technology to do this type of stuff, which is, it separates itself so much from a lot of other films. So I love the construction of the movie. It kind of plays itself out like a 50s noir kind of investigative type film. Richard Carlson actually narrates the film. Of course, it's not like full narrated, but his narration parts is he kind of explaining step by step and stuff like that, what they're doing and what they're trying to accomplish and stuff. It's very scientific talk. A lot of people might think this film is a little bit slow going, but I think the dialogue is very interesting, you know, accordingly with the narrative, because they really do explain everything that they're doing and stuff. It's a lot of scientific talk. A lot of it does make sense, especially if you're into science and stuff. Like you're dealing with like neurons and protons and generators and gigawatts, like all this type of stuff, and like everything seems to be kind of making sense, which is really interesting for a film like this. But yeah, so like I said, you know, a lot of the effects in this film are they're kind of left to your imagination, really, because it's not a physical monster. Right, it's an invisible monster. So a lot of the deaths and stuff that happen are off screen. They're due to the radiation and things like that. And also probably budget constraints too, because they have to kind of explain certain things that happen in the film. Like there's this one really cool scene where the military is kind of investigating this building that exploded, but then the science investigators, they're explaining to him that it didn't explode, it actually imploded because it was absorbing the energy from it and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, but you don't really get to see it. A lot of the effects that you do see are actually taken from an older German film, some stock footage and stuff towards the end. But I really like this whole film. It only runs about 75 minutes long, and doesn't overstay its welcome at all. And I really like how it has this whole doom and gloom feel to the whole movie. It's got this narration. It's a very kind of quiet film because they're under pressure. Like they really only have about 24 hours to figure out a way to stop this magnetic force before it takes over and basically destroys the world and kind of thing. And I really like that. And it has this dark feel to it, a very serious feel. And that's the other thing that really surprised me about this film. It is like almost overly serious. There's no comedy to it. They're taking it dead serious. And it's like, wow, it really kind of sucks you in, no pun intended, but into the narrative. And, you know, I've never really seen too many 50s sci-fi horror films that take themselves so damn serious and actually work, because what separates this one, like I said, is the authenticity of the investigation, of the science used, the technology used in this, and that just doesn't happen in a lot of other films. They're so out there. They're just so out there. So, but Richard Carlson's performance is fantastic. Like I said, he narrates it. His performance is great. The surrounding cast is really good in this too, and it's just a very intriguing film. It's very intriguing all the way through. So. If I had to rate this one, I'm going to come in at about a 7.5 out of 10. I think it's a really good idea, and I think it's really cool that they created this trilogy out of the Office of Scientific Investigation trilogy of films. The investigators within the office are called the A-Men. You know, that's what their agents are called, the A-Men. So they investigate these scientific phenomenons and things like that. So, but yeah, very scary idea. And it was a surprising film because I didn't know what to expect. I was expecting it, you know, like a lot of these films, to have these comedic elements and have these relief moments and stuff like that. But no, this one is like doom and gloom from the start to finish. It has that kind of sense of dread through the whole film. It just kind of captures it. But again, not a big visual film. You know, it's a very dialogue heavy, kind of slower moving, but well paced, if that makes any sense. So if this one is something that you know, sounds like it might be up your alley, definitely give it a shot, because it's definitely a very unique 50s sci-fi horror film. It's actually dubbed as being horror before sci-fi on IMDb, which is quite interesting too. But it's very sci-fi, but it has that horrific element that you could probably die at any moment, because radiation ain't something to be fucking with, right? So, very cool film. Very, very cool film. So The Magnetic Monster from 1953, give it a shot from Kino. The picture quality and sound quality on the Blu-ray is fantastic. It really is. They put out some fantastic black and white films, man. They do such a good job. So yeah, give that one a shot if that's something that sounds up your alley. I highly recommend it. So All right, guys, that's going to do it here for day 17, and I'll be back tomorrow as usual. All right, guys, as usual, deuces.